Record. Welcome to Fitness After 50 FAQs. So we've been hearing a lot lately about when you're 60-year-old, you're considered a senior. Well, you are considered a senior. You are a senior technically, according to the government, and that you're really incapable of being able to do certain activities. And what I heard just recently, Sal, you'll love. It was from a 30-year-old who actually said his father, who was in his 60s, would struggle to walk down a flight of stairs. Now, I don't know whether that to be fact or not, or whether he's made an assumption, but I'm just sitting there thinking, 60-year-old and not able to walk downstairs, there's got to be something going on there if he can't walk down the stairs. So today's question is going to be, is your family wrapping you up in cotton wool and thinking that you're old and incapable? Now, I'm going to start by saying my family don't wrap me up in cotton wool and they don't think I'm old and incapable. So, but that's because I tell them so, that I'm not. And I'm not old. Just stop that nonsense.
Yes.
So the thing about family, though, is they can be like really unintentionally treating us like we're old. So it's not that they really mean to do it. It's just that it happens. And that can actually leave us feeling like, that we're being disrespected and we're frustrated with the whole thing. So it is really, really important that we have our own voice. And it doesn't matter whether you're 50, 60, 70, 80, that we all need to have our own voice to stand up for how we're feeling or how we're being treated. And it's also important that family are more mindful of how they engage with their aging parents. Now, Sal, you're in your 50s. Do you find that as you're, moving into those mid-years, that your kids are starting to treat you any differently? No?
No, not at all. I was actually, and it's so funny because I was thinking about this yesterday and I was doing something with Landon, my grandson, and I can't even remember what it was, and it was like, oh, Mum, can you pick something up? And I actually thought about it and I thought, my kids still treat me, like I can do that stuff. And I can do that stuff, but they don't look at me as an old person or someone who's getting old and can't do things.
Yeah. And I think that's because they see you out there doing stuff. And I know that my kids are the same. They often say that they think that I'm quite more capable than what they are. But that's because they're in that stage of life where it's about work and about their young family, running them here and running them there. So they're just different stages. But I think one of the things that family can do is become quite overprotective. And they can treat us like we're kids or babies, and that they think that we can't make our own decisions or that we can't maintain our own independence. So I think that family needs to, if they see something that might need doing, that they offer assistance, but only when it's needed or when it's requested, as opposed to just doing everything for you.
Yeah. And as well also, looking out for dangerous situations, which obviously they would.
And just watching how they communicate in that overprotectiveness as well too. So, my mind goes to like a friend of Mum's. Her kids do literally everything for her. Everything. They do her shopping. they go pick her up, they take her to a doctor's appointments, the list goes on and on and on. And yet I see her, she's in a car flitting off to this social activity and that social activity, and she's doing all sorts of things. So she's more than capable of doing those things. But the kids have gone, oh, here, I'll help you with this. And she's just gone, well, that's okay. I'll let you do it.
I'm laughing because my kids, my kids do nothing. That's why I'm laughing. Like, there's people out there that are just doing, and look, I love it. Love having my kids at home. You know who I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's people out there doing everything for their parents. And that can be such a dangerous thing, because dangerous as in, okay, well, it's time to take my seat and sit here and wait till I go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that comes down to that they underestimate the abilities of the person themselves, not just physically, but mentally as well too. So, as a family member of someone who is starting to, move into those years, then you want to be encouraging them to stay active, to get engaged in activities that they enjoy. And I'm going to add to that, don't tell them that they need to go on the high horse now, to go and do gentle exercises. Like, we're not that incapable that we have to go and do gentle exercises, that we're not able to get our heart rates up. Look, it's okay if we do have some physical limitations or we have some ailments that we've got to take into consideration, but we should be still out there enjoying and getting involved in life. And I think what happens is, if our family is telling us that we're incapable or questioning our ability, we start to do that as well.
We do, absolutely. Yeah, that's what will happen. What will happen?
Yeah, totally. One of the things that just recently happened is Paul has been in hospital, as you know, and he was quite critical there for a while. And he got transferred from one hospital to the next. And he is older than what I am. And so when we got to the second hospital, he was just going in to have his infection monitored that was in his body. That was it. And when we got there, the nurse in charge started testing him for the over 70s, cognitive and physical assessment. And it was like, oh, hang on a minute, he's not here for that. He's normally an extremely fit and active person, but because of what's happened, he's not right now. He's still working. He's very, very capable. He's very alert mentally as well too. He doesn't really need to be assessed. What he needs to happen is for you to just take care of these things that he's been sent here for. So I think as a family member, we also do need to advocate for the person that we're representing as well too, and say, hang on a minute, you're treating them like an old person and they're not really an old person.
I think you have to keep in mind too, because old 40 years ago is a lot different to what old is now. I think about my grandparents, 40 years ago, and my grandma getting the blue rinse at 50 and and not exercising, never walked, any of those things. And you would, look and go, okay, they're old. That's old. But it's such a different world these days, someone at 70, there are women out there that you look at and you go, oh my God, you're 70. One of our clients, Helen Thurgood, she just blows your mind because of what she does. She gets out there and, she landscaped around her entire pool and helped the landscapers move dirt and cement and everything else.
Yes.
But 40 years ago, that would have been unheard of.
Yeah, totally right. Totally right.
And remembering 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, it's only like the 90s and the 80s. I'm not talking the 1950s.
Yeah. Time flies, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Time flies. The other thing that can also happen, I think, is that you can start to make decisions or not have that person involved in those decisions, or you can ignore their opinions and the ideas that they have. So I think it's really important that you have good communication, that you listen to what they're saying, and don't disregard their thoughts or their opinions on something, because when it comes to our own health, for example, or our own living arrangements as such, we're still very, very capable of making those decisions. But we might come to you and say, hey, listen, what do you think about this? I'm thinking about downsizing and moving, and I'm thinking that I might move to this area. And so you might say, well, that sounds great. Yeah, being on the beach might be a wonderful thing, but where are all your friends? What are the activities that you're currently doing that that you're going to have to start again, building that community that in that new area? Are you going to feel comfortable with doing that? So you're supporting that person through that decision, but you're actually listening to what they have to say about it as well too.
Yes. And as being that older person, you can ask for advice, but also you can set boundaries. This is just thank you so much for your advice. I appreciate it, but this is the decision I've made. This is my boundaries.
Yeah.
I've respected what you have told me, but please respect what I've put out there as my boundaries.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The other one that I really love is assuming that you're techo illiterate or challenged. Okay, so being someone that was the general manager of an IT company in the 80s, I like tech. Now, I'm not up to date with everything, nor do I want to be up to date with everything, but I'm not oblivious to it. So sometimes what we can do is assume that we need an old flip phone with great big numbers on it, but we don't.
No.
And the other assumption with that, Sal, is that we're not capable of learning something. And here's the one thing that I will say about aging, as someone who is in their 60s, and we're working with women who are all the way through to their 80s. They are continually learning. And when you're continually learning, then you're moving forward. You're not going backwards.
Absolutely.
You're using your brain. You're engaging in life. And I think that's important as well too.
Very important. And if you're somebody that has, is new to tech, I mean, you look at our 83-year-old Betty.
Yeah.
She went out and bought her first ring light the other week, tripod, so she could do her exercises.
Yeah.
If you are, in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and you're not very confident with your tech stuff, just remember there's so many courses, free courses out there at the library, the local libraries.
Yeah.
That offer those sort of courses for people over 50. I think they are.
I'm thinking about, when the pandemic first happened and we were in person with our fitness sessions, and we went, because we had been trialing online 12 months before that anyway, so we did have clients online, and we went, well, that's okay, we're just going to go online. And it was like,
I know, the panic.
the panic, and it was like, no, we've got a tech angel amongst us, because you having all of those young people in your house, you've got access to all those different devices. So if anybody had any issues, you could go and have a little fiddle with somebody's phone or iPad or whatever it happened to be, and you could work it out and support them. So but and the thing is that what I really, really loved about it was that the gorgeous Betty, again, who is in her 80s, went, oh, I'm just going to ring Letitia. She's going to be able to help me. So Letitia is another client who is in her 30s, and her and Betty are like this, like
Yes.
they're great mates. And so she came over, and they had the masks on and blah blah blah, and she showed her how to do it, and she was right as rain. And
Yes.
she's really embraced it, like, because life was a bit chaotic for me last week. I didn't have the chance to actually switch on all the workouts that were coming up for the week after, and everybody's used to me doing it on a Friday afternoon. Well, I got a phone call from Betty that say, it's not working. It's not working. Am I doing something wrong? No, you're not doing anything wrong. I just haven't turned it on yet because life's been crazy. So,
God bless her.
Oh yeah, just wonderful. Yeah, so please don't assume that we're technically inept. And the next thing that I'm going to go to, Sal, is a really interesting one, because our email had a bit of a glitch the other day. And so I put a call out to our IT people, who support that email address. And I will give IINet a bit of a shout out here, because, I got on the phone, and the guy who was on the phone was absolutely amazing. He said, do you know, I love the name of your email address, Strong Healthy Women. And so, I started talking to him about what we do and everything like that. And he said, you know what? He said, I just get really super frustrated. He said, as a young guy, he said, older people get disrespected or disregarded with the experiences that they have. We don't listen to what's happened to them and learn from the lessons that they've had in life. He said, but I would sooner listen to someone who's been through that, and rather than me making that same mistake, I can learn it from them. And so I think that that's another valuable lesson, is disregarding the past experiences of that older person as well too, because there is an absolute wealth of knowledge. And another thing that popped into my head just then is, when my grandfather was still alive, and you would know the mall, the old mall in Ipswich back in those days, and there was a seat just right smack bang in the middle of the mall, and all the older men would sit on that seat. Well, I was still, teenager in my 20s at the time, and I'd walk up and I'd say, good morning, and how is the knowledge seat going this morning? What? And so I'd have a little chat to these old guys, and they would pass on, those little snippets, or they'd give me some insight into what that hometown that I grew up in was all about, back in the day, and what was where and everything like that. And it's really, really interesting to know, there are tunnels that weave around underneath the place. And yeah, so it's fascinating when we spend time talking to older people.
Absolutely. I have my client, as you know, that has Parkinson's, and we had a bit of I wouldn't say it was a lazy day on Friday, but it was just a stroll. And his mother is buried up the local cemetery just up the road from me. And I said, do you want to go to the cemetery? And he said, that would be wonderful. So I took him up there. And it was interesting listening to him, because his mother's buried there. His grandmother's buried there, who came over from England in the 1950s.
Right.
And You know, it's all very wonderful listening to his different stories of growing up and remembering these people.
Yeah.
And can I just say,
go.
he enjoys sharing that information with me too.
Yeah.
Those stories, yeah. It brings a bit of brightness to his day too.
And Sal, how old is he? Is he in his 60s or 70s? Or
He's 67. He'll be 68 this year.
I thought he was in his 60s. Yeah, exactly. And I think that feeling like we're heard and appreciated for what we have to say is really, really important.
Yeah.
Rather than just
Definitely.
being, family member might just go, no, that's just the way it is, and shut it down.
Yeah.
So,
and I think as you get older, and I mean older as in when you're getting into your 80s and 90s and things are getting, that little bit harder, that's a hard thing to take, for people to tell you can't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the one that I wanted to finish up was neglecting the emotional needs of people who are older and not acknowledging it, because it becomes such an important part of life that we know that we've got that care and that love, and that support and understanding from our families. So we don't want to be treated like we can't do things. And we certainly, like, for example, don't want to be shut out of family activities, as an example. So, you might be organizing a party and it might be for, an 18-year-old birthday party. But it's like, Nan won't want to come to that because it's an 18th birthday party. But there's an assumption there. But Nan would definitely want to go to that. Well, this Nan would want to go to that 18th birthday party, having got now a 20-year-old granddaughter, and plus we've got a 2-month-old, so there's a lot of grandkids. So, yeah, we love being able to participate and go to the park and play on the swings and the slippery dips and the climbing things and do all of those activities. So we certainly are encouraged to participate in their life. And I think that's really, really important as well too. So
I was thinking about a story from my sister's wedding about my grandma. And she would have been 94, 95, I think it was. And we were at the reception, and back in those days it was, the bar was put on and all that sort of thing. And she said to my dad, who was her son, "Alan, where's the scotch? Why isn't the scotch on the bar?" Sure enough, she gets stuck into the scotch. Couldn't remember how she got home from the wedding reception. But at that age, it was like, who cares? She had the night of her life. She had a ball, know. And it's always been a funny story since that night. She would laugh about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sal, I think it's really, really important that we remember that everybody's individual capabilities and needs are going to be different, regardless of what age we are. So we just need to treat people with the respect that they deserve, and to put our good listening ears on, think about school, zip this and put these things on. So actually listen to people and allow them to communicate how they're feeling, and don't judge it, just listen to what they have to say. Because
and dignity, treat them with dignity.
Yeah,
they deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. But, coming back to the question at hand, are your family members, wrapping you up in cotton wool? Only you can answer that question. And if you feel like any of those points that we've talked about today, that is how your family is treating you, then you're able to step up and you're able to say, hey, listen, I'm actually able to do all of these things and I'm totally capable of doing them. And when I want support, I'm going to ask you for support, but I really, really do appreciate the fact that you love and care for me. So,
Perfect.
and remembering that if they start to wrap you up in cotton wool, then you're going to start to believe it. And so you certainly don't want to start to believe that you are that older person and that you cannot do the things that you want to do. Because I know that deep down we all have things that we want to do, whether that be skiing, hiking a mountain, going jet skiing, who knows what it is. It could be hiking a mountain, or it could simply be playing on a swing. It is about you and what brings that joy and warmth to your heart. And after all, it's the family that we have that are the ones that are going to be there right through.
Yeah. And I was listening to a guy the other day, and it was on a podcast, but it had been filmed as well, and it was such an amazing visual that he said, I'm 51 years old, so I've lived 51 years. This is what I've done in 51 years. He said, on average, I might live to 85. I might live to 90.
Yes.
He said, I've only got this much time to get in what I want to get done. And I thought that is just such, when you look at it like that, yeah. He said,
yeah.
I'm not gonna sit for the rest of my life and not get involved in life.
No, exactly right. And it's something that Andrew said to me. So Paul's son, he was over here working the horses with me of a morning when Paul first went into hospital. And we were talking about engaging with family. And he had this chart, which was really, really fascinating. It's like, how many times do you see your dad? How many times do you see your mum? How many times do you see, whichever family member it happened to be? And so let's expand that out and assume that they're going to live to 80 or 90 or whatever year it is. So that means that you have, for example, maybe 6 more visits with that person. What are you going to do with those 6 more visits?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's
it's
a good
so
note
powerful when you break it down. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So here's the moral of the story, ladies. Don't let your family wrap you up in cotton wool. Stand up for yourself because you are capable of doing whatever it is that you put your mind to. Now, your body might be feeling a little bit of angst about doing things, but, there are always ways to work around certain things. So thanks for joining me today, Sel.
Thank you for having me. Thank you
You're
for
very
coming,
welcome.
everybody.
Yes, thanks for being with us. One of the other things that as I was, putting some points down about this particular question, Sal, I thought, we can always take it to that next level. And how does society see us when we're 60 and 70 as well too? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's for another day.
Our next topic.
Maybe, yeah. All right, ladies, thanks for joining us. We'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.